Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Poems for People Who Hate Poetry. And today we're going to talk about The Song of the Three Minstrels by Thomas Chatterton, which, even if you're into a little bit of poetry, you may not have even heard of this guy. He is an early prelude to the Romantics that we were reading in the series that I'm doing right now. Now, what I wanted to do today is kind of go through and unlock this poem, because when you hear it, when you read it, you're going to notice that it's going to be very challenging. It's challenging for me. I don't know that I have the best interpretation, the best, anything understanding of this. There's a lot of words in here that I'm not sure I'm quite putting into prose correctly. But what I think does happen, even if you don't get that, even if there is something where, you're not going to see the whole, every single nuance that you could see. It's not the depth that you might get if you studied it for another 10 years or something. That's something fine. And I think you'll see that even by using some basic, techniques and understanding a little bit and really appreciating the words that are in a poem, that's part of the value of poetry. I always say that art sharpens the senses. It literally allows you to see spring. That we're going to talk about spring and love and sex and marriage and seeing the world, literally seeing the world, like your eyes actually seeing things in the world a little bit more clearly. And poetry and art in general, paintings do this more specifically with visuals. Poetry does it with concepts and words and ideas, but they kind of play together. I think you need to have a somewhat of a verse in all of them. And I don't mean that in a pun way, or do I? One of the books that I recommend if you want to if you're at all interested in words or linguistics and writing, is Spell It Out by, I don't know if you can see that with the glare, Spell It Out by David Crystal. There's a couple other books on language that I really like, such as The Miracle of Language and Nothing Less Than Words Can Say. I love Richard Mitchell. But one of the things that if you have any kind of interest in enjoyment of, of words at all, if you're interested in words, I think it's good to have an idea of the origin of where we know certain things come from, especially with spelling. And one of the reasons I'm going to talk about that is because there's going to be some odd spellings in here. I'm not sure enough about Thomas Chatterton and where he comes from. I didn't look him up at all. I didn't want to know anything. I'm just taking the poem to the best of my ability. But one of the things you get when you read, great poetry and especially old poetry is you see how words change. So, for instance, there's a word in here, kind. He uses the word kind, K-I-N-D, in a very weird way. Like, you may not understand what the heck he's talking about. Well, when you define it in the way he might have been using it several hundred years ago, and he may even be using an older version, he's writing around the 1700s, early 1700s. He may be using an even earlier view of the word kind. And that really means something more along the lines of nature or manner than what it, the mixture, the grab bag concepts it can mean today. So you'll see kind of how it's played in the poem. So my point is that, you want to learn about language at least a little bit, because we tend to, when we're talking, especially if you're a writer in any way, there's a reason why advertisers like to play with words a lot. They're playing with words to kind of clip on something that you really enjoy. But the reason you want to do this stuff and to see where it comes from, is to understand that there is an arbitrary element to writing and the way that grammar solidified, or the way that like, for instance, spelling solidified, or even certain concepts. That's not to say that words are not meaningful and they don't have an actual referent in reality. If I'm talking about poetry, I'm referring to a specific thing, and we can communicate based on the words that I'm saying right now. We can communicate. Those all have meanings that you understand and that I understand. I'm not trying to take away from that, but a lot of there are a ton of rules that are just bizarre and not not necessary, or not even not necessary, but can be restricting in a way that if you're a writer or a creator, or you just want to just, enjoy life a little bit more and see the world a little bit differently, and you enjoy, reading and learning new things, that it can be enjoyable to experience. And, just to give you one simple little example from this book, think about this. Why is the alphabet in the order that it's in? Why is A first and B second and C third? Why isn't it E, B, C, D, A, F, G, H, I? I mean, why did A have to come first? I mean, think about it. It's not like in nature there is an A that you just grab and it's like, oh, it's obviously in that order. Well, it's actually kind of arbitrary that A is first. Or, even that it's in the order, A makes a little bit more sense given the history of, alpha and omega, but even that is still a little bit arbitrary. But, like those types of things can come first, but you could still see like an I or an E coming first, or like, flipping an F and a G or something like that. Why the exact order, is the alphabet in that exact order? And the reason is because a guy who wrote a dictionary just chose it that way, and then it just stuck. That's it. There's no other reason for it except to write a dictionary, you have to choose an order. You can't have them, like just by necessity of physical reality. You have to put something first and something second and something third and fourth, fifth. So the guy, some guys who wrote some dictionaries hundreds of years ago, that's what they did. And it just happened that that's the order they chose, and that's the order that we still. So what that means is that, there is the point I'm trying to make is that there's a level of arbitrariness in this. And that is if you like language, if you like literature, if you like poetry, that's part of what makes it interesting. And poetry in any era, but especially if you go back a couple hundred years, that's where you go to play with words. That's where words go to play. Okay, so here's what we're going to do for this poem. Let me show it to you a little bit so you can get an idea of the words and what we're going to go and the process we're going to go through. So I'm going to read the poem all the way through. It's not a very long poem, but like I said, it's a very complicated poem. And what we're looking for is how to unlock it, to get some meaning out of it, to translate it in our minds, to really understand what's going on. And part of the tools we're going to need are these terms. We're going to need words. We're going to have to try to understand what we think these words mean. If you wanted to follow along, you can go to kirkbarbera.com. That's my website. And you can go to the most recent blog. And that's what I'm looking at here. There's a word in here that I could not find. I don't know what the hell that means. If anybody knows what inutilail means, I looked it up everywhere. I could not find that thing. And then once we do that, a little bit of that, we're going to do some prose translations. And that's where we basically turn this stuff that's in a different grammar, that's playing on the sound as well as the meaning more than the concrete specific prose definition or syntax, where word order is critical and getting a meaning based on the relationship of words is everything. That's the whole point of this kind of prose versus verse. Prose versus verse. Okay, so this is called The Song of the Three Minstrels by Thomas Chatterton. So a minstrel, just so you have some idea of what we're talking about, a minstrel, here's a little picture, is a kind of a troubadour, a bard. This is medieval times. They're traveling entertainers and song singers. Remember, this is before iPods and the internet and TV and radio. So the only way to get any kind of entertainment is for someone to go around to village, and they didn't have a lot of urban areas. Most people lived in little villages all over the country. And so these minstrels would go around and, play songs and sing about the heroic deeds of men who went out and fought dragons and things like that. And that's basically a minstrel. So this is the Song of Three Minstrels. Okay, so again, I'm going to read this. It's not going to make a lot of sense. And that is okay. It's okay not to make sense. But it's not okay to just give up because you don't understand it. Because my argument here is that you will see the world better. Your mind will be stronger. And you will, if you like puzzles even a teeny bit, you'll see that the technique we're using is simply to unlock the poem, is to find the puzzle pieces and kind of slowly put them together. And maybe my puzzle piece isn't as good as yours because to some degree it's not in a prepackaged, box, the puzzle pieces. To some degree, you're kind of making the puzzle pieces and carving them a little bit yourself. And so you have to put these damn things together. So I may put it a little bit together and you're like, Kirk, you're stupid. This goes over here. So you'll see how it kind of comes little by little as we go through this. Okay, so let me read this first one. Now let me go through this little poem all at once. It's really important to get just a general feel for it. And honestly, you should probably read it several times, especially one this complex or this difficult to understand. Okay, first, Minstrel. The budding, I already started off great. The budding flowerets blushes at the light. The meas besprinkled with the yellow hue. In daisied mantles is the Mountain Dite. The nesh young cowslip bendeth with the dew. The trees enleafed unto the heaven straught, when gentle winds do blow, to whistling din is brought. The evening comes and brings the dew along. The ruddy welkin shineth to the eyne. Around the ale stake minstrels sing the song. Young ivy round the doorpost do entwine. I lay me on the grass, yet to my will, albeit all is fair, there lacketh something still. Second Minstrel. So Adam thoughten when, in paradise, all heaven and earth did homage to his mind. In woman only man's pleasure lies. As instruments of joy were made the kind. Go, take a wife unto thine arms, and see winter and barren hills will have a charm for thee. Third Minstrel. When autumn bleak and sunburnt do appear, with his gold hand gilding the falling leaf, bringing up winter to fulfill the year, bearing upon his back the ripe sheaf. When all the hills with woody seed is white, when lightning fires and leaves do meet from far the sight. When the fair apple, red as even sky, do bend the tree unto the fruitful ground. When juicy pears and berries of black dye do dance in air and call the eyes around. Then be the even foul or even fair. Methinks my heart's joy is stinked with, I don't know how to say that word, with some care. Second Minstrel. Angels be wrought to be of neither kind. Angels alone from hot desire be free. There is a somewhat ever in the mind that without woman cannot be stilled be. No saint in cell, but having blood and tear, to find the sprite to joy on sight, woman fair. Women be made not for themselves, but man, bone of his bone, and child of his desire. From an inutile member first began, why wrought with much of water, little fire. Therefore they seek the fire of love to heat the milkiness of kind, and make themselves complete. Albeit without women, men were peers to savage kind, and would but live to slay. But woman oft the sprite of peace to sow cheers, touch laud in angels' joy they angels be. Go, take thee quickly to thy bed a wife, be banned or blessed high in proving marriage life. Okay. I hope that made no sense to you at all, because if it made a lot of sense to you, then you need to be doing this podcast, not me, because that made no sense. Even reading it again, I still got lost a lot. So I'm going to, if you go to kirkbarbera.com, you can scroll down to the bottom and you'll see my prose translations. Now, the prose translations, when I do them, I try to make them somewhat like a story, but this one was a little bit difficult. So I tried to make it as just literal translation, just as I could make it, that it was clear to me and maybe a little bit clear to you. So let's go through this. So the budding flowerets blushes at the light, the meas besprinkled with the yellow hue. So again, you're going to have to go to the terms if you want to know, a little bit more about what these words mean. But meas, for instance, means meadow. So you need to know that. Hue is, of course, color. So think about it. The budding flowerets. Now, flowerets, you could just, even if you thought of just as flowers, that's enough. So blushes at the light. So the budding flowerets blushes at the light. Blushes. Well, obviously, he doesn't mean it literally. Again, we're in the world of poetry. So what do we mean by blushes? I mean, what color does your face change when it blushes? It changes to a little bit of a red. The meadows, means meadow, be sprinkled with the yellow hue. Again, he's giving these, personality and this characteristics and this, he's endowing the world with different types of verbs and actions that makes it, different to look at. When you look at a dawn, all you probably see are just some colors that are maybe very beautiful, and you just say beauty, right? And I've always thought that this is one of the most boring ways to live out your 80, 90 years on this place, is to every time you see something beautiful, beauty. I can't imagine why women would stay with a man for long if all he can say about her is she's beautiful. It's like, oh, really? Great. So I'm like everything else in the universe that's beautiful. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? So beauty subsumes so much. It subsumes the budding flowerets blushing in the light and the meadows that are sprinkled with yellow hue. That's a way of describing beauty, actually giving it physical attributes. This is what it means to be a human. This is what it means to sharpen your senses. This is why I'm so passionate about this stuff. It's like, you're not living if every time you see a flower, you're like, oh, beautiful. Okay. Moron, like, come on, like, there's more to it than that. Now, again, I do that all the time. I'm not trying to denigrate you if you go out and say this is beautiful. I'm trying to say, like, come on, man, like, there's so much of seeing the world, and you're gonna fucking die. So, and stop and smell the roses, and don't just stop and smell the roses, but stop and understand how they're the harmony of all of these things moving together within as they hit your senses, which is a miraculous thing, that we have this ability to see, to touch, to smell, and to be able to comprehend a concept of like sublime beauty. I mean, that's just, animals don't look at a tree and think beautiful. It thinks like, that's where I can put my berries or nuts or something for the winter, right? Like, and they don't even think. So it's just so crazy to me that people don't appreciate this. But and let me not, do a rant on appreciation. I don't mean appreciate. I mean understand. I mean, our education system has brutalized, it's sodomized, it's decapitated all of literature and the humanities from actual human beings. It's taken humans, just sliced us in the middle of our heads all the way down our bodies, and just cut us fucking in half, man. It's crazy. I mean, this didn't, normal human men were not so severed from their souls as they are today. And where it's, an idiot trying to make $1 billion, and, that same person has no concept of anything of this kind of grandeur and beauty and sublimity of any of the spiritual realm at all. And, when I call him an idiot, it's not because there's anything wrong with seeking material wealth. That's great. What's idiotic is the material wealth without the underlying spiritual values to give it reason, purpose, meaning, and anything, which is why you're getting all these rich people who always go to like Scientology or fucking, some kind of leftist ideology. They have to be, their vacancy in their soul has to be filled with God or with something which is better than nothing, even though I don't think it's the best. I think there's better things you can do with your time, with your spiritual values. Okay, so all that's from the budding floweret. No, I'm just kidding. No, but the budding flowerets blushes at the light And this guy, this poet, is looking out at this meadow, the meadows be sprinkled with the yellow hue, and he's seeing a dawn on this meadow. So he's looking out, he's seeing these budding flowerets. They're blushing at the light, and which gives it a color. Blush is red, but it also gives it a temperament. So it's saying it's like these coy little. So he's building a scene for you. So the budding flowerets blushes at the light. So the light, what is the light? Friggin' sun, come on. So the light's coming up, the sun is coming up, and you have this these beautiful flowers that are finally starting to blossom and such. Okay, in daisied mantles is the mountain dite. I really love that one. I mean, daisied mantles. So basically this mountain, and dite means near. Ooh, I think so. Let me look that one up, make sure I have that correct. Dite means clothed. Had that off. Dite means clothed. So in daisy demantled is the mountain clothed. So it's important to look words up, otherwise nothing's going to make sense to you. So you know what a mantle is and a clothing, and it's so basically this mountain is clothed or equipped in daisies. Interesting. So that's so instead of saying like, oh, look at all the daisies, you say it's clothed in daisies. And that gives it personality, gives it meaning, it gives it reasoning, it gives it, image in your mind. The nesh, I believe is tender. The nesh young cowslip bendeth with the dew. By the way, I'll scroll down so you can see this. Don't get dizzy. This is a cowslip. These are cowslips. These are a type of flower. So nesh is tender. We're going to see stretched, clothed, welcome in the sky. So try to go to kirkbarbera.com. It's worth it. I know my website. I'm trying to just plug my website, but check it out because I put all the work into doing this for you. Okay, in daisied mantles is the mountain dite. So again, these first three lines, so much is done in these first three lines. This is the power of well-chosen words. Is the work of these words is carrying a whole world. You have color in the flowerets, blood, and then you have temperament as there a coyness to these flowers as they're dawning. We know that it's dawn. We know that it's early dawn. We know that it's morning, and vegetation and are budding, and there's dewy mountains, and they're mantled with daisies. And then the nesh young cowslip bendeth with the dew. The trees enleafed. I don't even think that's an actual word. I think it's an old English word or Middle English word. And it just, enleafed, it looks like what it sounds like. I think the definition is what it looks like, where it's basically, it's enleafed, like bursting with leaves. Unto heaven straught, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but straught or stroft, whatever, is stretched. So you have these young cowslips, they're bending with the dew. You have these trees that are stretching to heaven. And then you have a sound when gentle winds do blow, to whistling din is brought. So din, I believe, means just a loud, prolonged noise of some sort. Okay. So we have this scene, this first in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. We have this immense scene that you could talk about for hours and hours. And it gives you a view of this, like you can literally see the cowslip. If you do a good job of this, you could see the flowerets blushing in the light. Like, picture a cartoon from like the 90s, like a Looney Tunes cartoon or something, where you see all the dancing daisies, and you see when they get sad, they droop. Like that's kind of the scene that this is an early cartoon in a sense. Okay, next stanza. The evening comes. Okay, so we already know that was morning and then evening. So we have a whole day. The evening comes and brings the dew along. The ruddy welkin is heaven, shineth to the eyne. Eyne means eyes. It's just referring to your two eyes. It's just an old English way of saying or spelling that. Around the ale stake minstrels sing the song. So ale stake, is this. So this is an ale house, or like some kind of cheesy representation I found online. I think it's a little small for an ale house, but whatever. It's an ale house, and this is an ale stake. if you can see this thing sticking out of it. If you can't, if you're listening to this, then go to kirkbarbera.com to see it. But it's basically like the signpost you might see sticking out from the top of a ale house. And this kind of indicates that this is an ale house, this is a place of fun and pleasure and physical. This is a place where you go to be rowdy, be silly, to drink spirits, to find your physical pleasures, things of that nature. So it's an earthly thing. The ruddy welkin shineth to the eye. Around the ale stake, minstrels sing the song. Young ivy round the doorpost do entwine. I lay me on the grass, yet to my will, albeit all is fair, there lacketh something still. So, when you, one of the things in art history that you learn is how trends start to develop. And that's one of the reasons why I think in this book that I got recently that I'm really enjoying, English Romantic Verse, Penguin Classics. I do like the Penguin Classics. I think they do a good job. And one of the things that you learn is how these trends begin. So if you look at, the 1500s, the classics, you start to, you see that when they're talking, when a poet's talking, it could be in beautiful verse, it could be really entertaining, it could be really intellectual, but it tends to be somewhat separate from your own experiences. So, the classic example, even though it has the pronoun my mind, so it's talking about my mind, to me a kingdom is. It's about my mind. But when you read the actual poem, it's just a listing of things that he appreciates, moral things he appreciates about how great his mind is and how serene his mind is and how it, helps him through. So it's like he's writing. So whenever you read a lot of, poetry from pre-1700s, a lot of it tends to be, especially during a very religious era, a lot of it tends to be like a almost a sermon, a chronicling. It's like an essay. It's like this guy's writing an essay, versus when you read something like "Surprised by Joy" by William Wordsworth, which is basically this moment that Wordsworth feels where he wants to tell his daughter that there's something beautiful he sees over here, and then he remembers that his daughter's dead. But then he brings this universal meaning behind it. So there's a big difference between writing an essay about the death of your daughter, which is I did a comparison about a week ago, and there's this, On My Son, I believe it's called. I can't remember the author right now. This is like in the 1500s versus William Wordsworth, Surprised by Joy. And they're both on the same kind of theme, but they're just so dramatically, the style is so dramatically different. Okay, so let us see. The evening comes, so we have this new scene. So in the second stanza, here's my prose translation. At evening, the dew returns. This brings a view of the reddish-colored dusk to your eyes. Around alehouses stand singing entertainers making their livings. They look like young ivy around an old home. I lay down to listen and enjoy. Yet, as I lay down, something affects my psyche. Although everything seems wonderful, I feel something missing. So this is the first minstrel. So you have a couple of minstrels singing, and that's what this poem's about. One minstrel is talking, he's saying there's this beautiful scene set, right? This is the first stanza, budding flowerets, blushing at the light. And then, so he's having a wonderful day, and this beautiful day, he's just frolicking around. And then he gets to the ale house to kind of go drink and have fun and listen to the minstrels, around the ale house, kind of entertaining everybody. And then he goes to lay down on the grass and listen and enjoy like you would if you went to a concert today. You go to a concert, you go lay down on grass, you kind of drink a beer, kind of enjoying yourself. And then all of a sudden you look over and you realize something's missing. Okay, you can probably guess where this is going. If not, then live a little. Come on. Are you 12? All right. Second minstrel. So Adam and who's next? Who's not mentioned? So we know where this is going. So Adam thought to win in paradise. All heaven and earth did homage to his mind. In woman only man's pleasure lies. As instruments of joy were made the kind. Go, Take a wife unto thine arms, and see winter and barren hills will have a charm for thee. So this is a second minstrel. So we have the first minstrel setting up this problem. He's in this beautiful day, but something's missing. What could be missing? And that's why this is so powerful and important to understand the style is everything in poetry. So it's this gorgeous, perfect, amazing day for this guy. He's enjoying the day. He's walking around. So what is missing? So the second minstrel kind of answers, and he kind of tells him, he's like in his psyche, he's like, hey, dude, when Adam was in paradise, he was thinking that when he was there, the entire universe would pay him respect and he would enjoy everything, particularly to however his mind would be safe and enjoyable and be able to have all the fun he wanted. But only through woman can man find pleasure, as it is in her nature to be an instrument of joy for him. So you there, he's talking to this guy who's laying down. You there, the second minstrel's talking to the first minstrel. Go get a wife, man, and discover how even winter nights or barren hills will have a charm to them. So he's saying that if you get a wife and have sex with her, and that's a part of it, the charm part, and we'll get to that later as they talk about, take her to your bed. But first you got to find the wife, of course. Now this is, of course, in a very religious era. I don't think you have to get married to have sex, but that's in this era. They would not, this guy anyway would not prescribe. Although there are some poets who would, even in this time, would tell you just go get laid. But this guy is saying go get married, then go get laid. So it's like, okay, he's obviously very Christian. At least he has some sentiment there. Go take a wife unto thine arms, and then the charm, the whole world will have a different charm. So I hope you're seeing how this is kind of, unlocking a little bit. If you look at what thoughtin means, it just means to have a certain type of thought. So Adam thought when he was in paradise, all heaven and earth would pay homage to his mind, but only in woman, pleasure is fine. So part of what I'm doing is translating this for myself to understand it a little bit differently. Now, maybe you'll understand it differently. I would love for you to, message me and let me know how you interpreted this. Third minstrel. So it's the third dude. Remember, there's three guys singing up there. When autumn bleak and sunburnt do appear, with his gold hand gilding the falling leaf, bringing up winter to fulfill the year, bearing upon his back the ripe sheaf, when all the hills with woody seed is white, when lightning fires and leaves do meet from far the sight. So when autumn's bleak hand comes from the heavens and paints the leaves gold, preparing the world, so autumn or fall, preparing the world for winter. So that's what autumn does. Autumn isn't just something that happens to a poet. To a poet, autumn prepares the world for fall, right? And so again, this is seeing the world through the eyes of a poet. It's just a different way of looking. Instead of thinking, it's, a fall day or whatever. It's fall. I'm in fall and it's just getting a little colder. And that's the extent of what fall means to me. Or I have to bring the kids back to school. Instead, he's saying that fall, autumn bleak is this bleak thing and it's sunburnt. And, it's going to paint the world gold. And it's going to bring up winter to fulfill the year. It's going to prepare the way for winter, bearing upon, autumn's back. So autumn is a thing or a human. It's personified as a human now, and is going to be this sheaf. And I can scroll down here for you again. Here's a sheaf. You've probably seen a guy and a farmer back in the medieval times carrying a sheaf. That's what this means. When all the hills with woody seed is white, so all the wood, all the trees are, and all the hills are white with what? Well, snow probably. When lightning fires and leaves do meet from far the sight. So I think you see people's homes and little fires lighted everywhere so people can be warm, and part of that is togetherness. When the fair apple red as even sky, so now he's comparing an apple to the sky, which is a nice comparison. Do bend the tree unto the fruitful ground. So you have this, picture a tree it's fall. So it's, starting to, the apples are starting to fall. And, so you're getting that kind of imagery. And, When juicy pears and berries of black dye do dance in air and call the eyes around. Then be the even foul or even fair, methinks my heart's joy is, I don't know how to pronounce this damn thing, because I don't want to say stenched or stank. That's what it sounds like. Stanked with some care. What does stanked mean again? Oh man, I just lost it. Stanked. What a word, man. Stanked. Stanked. This man, his heart is joyed and is stanked with some care. Okay. So I had it and I don't know where it is. Stanked, mingled. Methinks my heart's, so this is heart, this word heart. It's just a different spelling, and I have it at kirkbarber.com. Methinks my heart's joy is stanked with some care. And so again, he's kind of saying, I think that my heart's joy is kind of mingled with some care. Now, how can we take care in that sense? Do we mean like mingled with care as in a mother's care? Like it's mingled with his own feelings and then his mother's feeling, or care in the sense of trouble? I think trouble, like there's something troubling. This is the third minstrel, so it's a new minstrel. So when the apple red, all this stuff, he's looking around, all these fruits, which can be analogy for women, are dancing like a woman will dance, and it's very sexual. But also the red apple, also these are symbols typically for women. And then whether the evening's foul or fair, no matter how the evening is, something inside me is stanked with some care, is covered with a little bit of care or worry. So I'm worried about something is what I'm getting out of that. So my little translation of that is, when the red apple, red as dusk, bends the trees, they will fall to the ground. Very literal one this time. Juicy pears and blackberries dance and swing on the vine and cause all passerby to look upon them. During that time, whether the night is fair or foul, I believe my heart's joy is mingled with worry. Second minstrel. So we're back to the second minstrel. Remember, the second minstrel here was the one who gave the advice. Angels be wrought to be of neither kind. Angels alone from hot desire be free. There is somewhat ever in the mind that without woman cannot be still to be no saint in cell, but having blood and tear do find the sprite to joy on sight of woman fair. Tear means muscle. So angels be wrought meaning like put together, hammered together, like from the heavens, or they're made, as Adam and Eve are made, to be of neither nature. Kind nature. Angels alone from hot desires be free. So only angels are free from desire. And this is why I get in this conversation with Catholics all the time. I just find it funny that they really don't see that their whole ideology is predicated on this idea of separating and glorifying the removal of the sin of the body and the pleasures of the body. And the fact that an angel, the thing that they revere as like this beautiful creature, perfection and the ideal, is a thing that's always been presented as a thing that doesn't suffer from the feel of, the desire for food, for drink, for sex, for touching, for any bodily desire, or any, even the bodily functions, the gross ones, right? Like angels don't have anything. It's not like angels poop. Like they don't do any of that stuff, right? They're angels, for God's sakes. Well, my point is that there's this view of separating the things of the body and just having the spiritual things, and that those things are better. And that this view is prevalent in this poem. Now, there are some poems that I've read, and I'll read some more poems in the future when we're going that are actually trying to combine body and soul. So the opposite to this view is there's a somewhat long poem called The Body Electric by Walt Whitman, which is all about the wonders of the physical body and all the things that it does. Although it kind of separates the soul aspect and makes it seem like the soul isn't necessary, or the angel part of it. Okay, so angels be wrought of another kind. So again, this is the second minstrel. He's kind of like almost like a priest telling you what to do, and he's explaining things to you. So angels, the other minstrels are kind of talking about problems they're having or views they're having, what they're looking at. This angel or this minstrel is going like, well, by the way, in case you didn't know, angels be wrought by neither kind. They have no desires. They're free from hot desire. There is a somewhat ever in the mind that without a woman cannot be stilled, be saint in cell, but having blood and tear, to find the sprite to joy on sight woman fair. That's a weird one that I translated into something like this. There is something in the mind of man that cannot be stilled, but since he is of blood and muscle, he finds woman joyful and pleasurable on sight, or part of his nature. Okay, next stanza. Women be made not for themselves, but man, bone of his bone and child of his desire. I actually like that saying, that phrase. It's not very feministic and, PC or SJW today, whatever. Bone of his bone and child of his desire. But there's something, there's something to that in the context we're talking about, right? Obviously, I wouldn't advocate that as a universal truth or universal advocacy in terms of politics, right? Like making women slaves or something. No, but there's something when you choose to be in this context, that there's something to the idea of bone of his bone and child of his desire. That women are made for men in this case. I know that a lot of women may not like that, but too bad. Okay, from an Untitled member first began. I don't know if that means like another, like if it's referring to Adam and Eve is, brought out from Adam. And so anyway, from a Untitled member first began, why wrought, I don't know, with much of water, little fire. Therefore they seek the first fire of love to heat the milkiness of kind, to heat the milkiness of nature, and make themselves complete. So I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure the milkiness of nature is pretty sexual in terms of the sexual product that man produces at the climax of the sexual moment or climax. I'm pretty sure that's what's being referred to here. Is since man is, made up of water, and there's a lot of water and there's not a lot of fire, or individually, I think he's saying here, each individual person doesn't have a lot of fire, but together they produce heat, and that heat, produces the milkiness of kind and makes themselves complete. So he's talking about, I think, the nature of this act of sex. And then here's the last stanza. Albeit without women, men were peers, equals, to savage nature. So they had a savage nature, and would but live to slay. So they would live only to kill. But woman oft the sprite of peace so cheers. Tochlod is endowed. So, but woman oft the sprite of peace so cheers, endowed in angels' joys, and they angels be. So they're endowed with this angel's joy, and they're angels, in fact. Go, take thee quickly to thy bed a wife. Be banned or blessed high quickly, improving marriage life. So, in other words, go do the marriage act. Go find yourself a woman. Go do the marriage act. That will, endow and prove the purpose and the meaning and the whole reason why we have marriage and why we've created the institution. And he's saying that you should go quickly take, he's not saying go take thee quickly to thy bed a wife and find out if you can make a baby, although I think there's an implicit aspect to that. But I think he's saying more just enjoy the sexual component of it. And so this is a poem that I think is really stressing the natural desire of the sexual act, but also how the relationship between man and woman, and particularly from the perspective of a man, is that the whole world becomes more enjoyable when you have sex and when you are married. So it's a type of reason for why you should get married. You should get married, and so you can have a lot of sex, so that even when you're in the barren, it's barren hills, and it's dead of summer and everything's dead or whatever, or things are dying, and because they're so dried out, or it's winter and everything's bleak winter. But if you're with a woman, then it's all like autumn. It's all like this beautiful moment, this moment where that guy is sitting down at the beginning, right? So we have this first minstrel. He's enjoying this beautiful day, and he's sitting around, he's enjoying things, and then, but he's missing something. So he is missing something in a beautiful day. But the third minstrel, who's the kind of proselytizer, is going around saying, well, if you have a woman, you'll basically have that day all the time. I think that's part of the moral here. So that's the poem. I think if you go to kirkbarbera.com, you can see a little bit more of the poem. You could read my translations. You can look at the terms and kind of come to your own, understanding. What do you think it means? What is your understanding of this poem, and how do you interpret it? And my whole point here today, and what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is help you not just enjoy one or two poems, because if you just listen to me ramble on about some of these poems, maybe you'll find it interesting, maybe not. But the real trick is for you to go out and do it for yourself, even once a month, once a year. I'm not expecting you to become a poet professionally. I just think if you add a little bit of poetry, you'll be amazed how much of a different person you will begin to develop into. Okay, so I'll see you next time on